Hello everyone, Diego's Blood back to spray again, and as I've started to make more content about Bleach in the past couple of months, I've gotten a few repeated comments asking about characters like Uryu or even Askin, from people not really understanding what makes them as powerful as they're regarded to be within the community, so I thought I'd go ahead and take the time today to rank Yhwach's Elite Royal Guard, or what I'll be referring to as the Schutzstaffel for the rest of the video. This includes Quincy like Gerard Valkyrie, Uryu Ishida, Pernida Parnkgjas, Lille Barro, and Askin Nakk Le Vaar. I know some consider Jugram to be a pseudo-member of the Schutzstaffel, but this doesn't necessarily add up with certain context or statements we'll get into later, and I plan to talk more in depth about Jugram maybe in his own video or another versus battle video sometime in the near future. Regardless, I won't take any more of your time, and we can go ahead and start now with the ranking. I want to somewhat preface this discussion by saying that regardless of who is ranked where or what the reasoning is, every last one of the members of the Schutzstaffel are powerful and should each be respected in their own ways. As Volume Extras refers to those brought up to the Royal Palace, which includes the Schutzstaffel alongside Jugram to be Yhwach's strongest soldiers, with Can't For Your Own World taking it a step further to declare the Schutzstaffel to be unrivaled among the Quincy, and Lil Tato Lampard even going as far as to say that she could only believe that Jugram and Yhwach were killed if the guard were somehow taken out beforehand. With that being said, however, first up on the list will have to be the left arm of the Soul King, Pernida Parnkgjas. Pernida is someone who's been looked down upon to a certain extent in the past for fighting captain of 12th Company Mayuri Kurotsuchi, someone who, despite some good abilities when utilizing his modified Zanpakuto or poisons and so on, isn't necessarily the first character that comes to mind when thinking of raw physical power or speed. But to Pernida's credit, everything Mayuri attempted to do to damage it, Pernida just outright negated, whether it be severing its limbs or using his newly modified Bankai, which was essentially a direct counter to Pernida's Shrift, DC, or Compulsory, allowing it to have remarkable control of human nerves to the point where it can shoot its own nerves from its body to control its opponents, instantly turning corpses into compact balls or destroying the arms of people like Yoroichi and Kenpachi, albeit a Kenpachi in base and with his eye patch. Its nerves also absorb and utilize information in order to evolve Pernida to even greater heights, changing its speech and some of its physical attributes, or what Mayuri perceives as Pernida regaining its memories as the Soul King. This evolution would prove to be Pernida's downfall, however, as Mayuri allows it to consume Nimue, including a portion of her brain that contains her ability to continue her growth beyond what is theoretically possible. The only problem being that without her complete cerebrum regulating this evolution, it could get out of hand, leading to self-destruction due to excessive growth. Pernida could potentially be much stronger depending on who it fights, considering that its nerves adapt and evolve based on the information that it absorbs throughout the battle, but looking at what we're actually given, Pernida can only rank at the bottom. I'd like to reiterate again, however, that Pernida is by no means weak, it's just that the showings of the other Schutzstaffel are more impressive by comparison. Next up, we have the D or death-dealing Askin Nakk Le Vaar. Askin can be a difficult character for some people to grasp, and it's pretty easy to see why, as not only is there a significant lack of content available covering the war arc, which hopefully changes in correspondence alongside the anime soon return with its third core, but also due to the fact that Askin's abilities reach some JoJo's Bizarre Adventure tiers of specific and confusing when casually reading, which you may notice with other members of the Schutzstaffel or reading Bleach in general, that Kubo gives his characters these strangely specific abilities that end up being rather nifty or outright overpowered in combat. When put simply, Askin's the death dealing allows him to precisely and accurately calculate the amount of any substance needed for it to be considered a lethal dose and can alter that amount accordingly at will. For example, let's say that Hanataro has 1.5 gallons of blood in his body, and a lethal dose of that blood would be 3 gallons of blood in his body. Askin can then alter that lethal dose amount to instead be 0.5 gallons, meaning that the amount of blood in Hanataro's body by default is now actually a lethal dose. It can be confusing when you first hear it, and Askin himself says he didn't really get it initially, but with this ability it's no wonder he was able to become a Schutzstaffel. Though he has many other abilities to the point that he may even warrant his own video, the death dealing alone also grants Askin remarkable defensive capabilities, as he can alter the fatal dose of his opponent's spiritual pressure on himself to the point where they cannot damage him with complete immunity to their attacks, allowing him to somewhat protect himself against opponents who are stronger than himself, alongside other abilities such as Gift Ring, which completely bypasses Reiatsu negating hacks. Volt's stand goes a step further to adapt his body completely to the effects of poisons, no matter how they may change, negating the differences in Yoroichi's spiritual pressure while in her cat form. With these tools, it's no understatement to say that Askin Nakk Le Vaar is quite the tricky opponent, and this coincides well with his narrative being that, unlike the other Quincy, Askin isn't necessarily loyal to Yhwach so much as he is interested in seeing what he plans to create after destroying the cycle of life and death, along with the Order of the Three Realms. Though the powers of his Shrift rank alongside some of the stronger characters within the series, Askin still isn't necessarily a physical fighter, and he makes it pretty clear that he believes both Yoruichi and Urahara are stronger than him, and even goes as far as to run from base Grimmjow. For why he's above Pernida specifically, Mayuri's still somewhat living in Urahara's shadow even a decade or so after the war doesn't bode well with the fact that Askin should also be capable of utilizing the death dealing in order to counter the lethality of the nerves on his body, or potentially if the nerves are able to control him at all. So Askin takes the spot. Following Askin, however, is the X or X-axis, Lille Barro. Lille Barro's shrift allows him to pierce all things between the muzzle of his gun and his target, regardless of what may be in its way, without any room for concepts such as dodging to interfere. But it is only when he opens both of his eyes that he grasps the true essence of the X-axis, that not only allows him to penetrate any and all that stand within his path, but grants him the ability to penetrate the weapons of his opponents, or in other words, complete intangibility. This was the first shrift to ever be granted to any Quincy by Yhwach himself, hence why Lille declares that he is the masterpiece closest to God, or believes himself to be God's messenger, whose visage feels akin to that of an irritating burn in the tarnished eyes of the sinner, and he considers opening both of his eyes to be unfair to sinners. Though Shunsui does manage to get the better of Lille through the use of his games and even blitzing him as he cuts his weapon, Lille's Volstandig, Zeliel, or Divine Judgment prevented Shunsui from making any sort of further contact with his body, utilizing his aforementioned intangibility to the point that it could be said he gained a new all-encompassing immunity to the four arts, being Hoho, Zanjutsu, Kido, and Hakura. Within this Volstandig, Lille goes even further to alter the properties of his X-axis shots as they become rays of light that he may rain down from the skies upon those that he deems as sinful, alongside regeneration seen after being decapitated by the fourth act of Shunsui's Bankai. With these abilities, Lille was given the position of leader among the Schutzstaffel, with no one questioning or disputing this arrangement. This becomes even more impressive when you consider certain statements earlier on, such as Yhwach admitting to Uryu that he was indeed given the role of successor to his throne, due to the fact that Uryu possesses a sort of power that exceeds his own in Yhwach's words, meaning that positions within the Wandenreich or Quincy hierarchy may likely be given based on power, which explains why other powerful characters like Jugram declare that he is the Grand Master of the Sternritter, meaning that he is beyond the Schutzstaffel entirely. Though he was countered by his Bankai and the reflecting power of Nanao Zanpakuto, Lille being at all able to give Shunsui a run for his money is nothing to scoff at when taking into consideration how highly someone like Yamamoto viewed both Shunsui and Ukitake, someone portrayed to be his equal, affirming that the two are indeed in a class of their own after being impressed with Shunsui's flash step or Shunpo, alongside stating that there was no one who could match either of them. The databooks take a step even further to declare both Shunsui and Ukitake as peerless even to those that precede them, meaning that Lille Barro was able to trouble someone potentially stronger than both the Yoruichi or Urahara that Askin is more so afraid of, and justifying his placement above him. Given his abilities, it's hard to imagine how most other fighters within the story could actually damage him, and he was only killed when put up against two people who had direct counters to said abilities. Next up, we have the M or the Miracle, Gerard Valkyrie. This may seem strange given the context and statements I had just provided regarding Lille's position as leader within the Schutzstaffel, but as the Schutzstaffel had never been put into a difficult fight, and as it's somewhat implied by both Gerard himself as well as Askin, it's safe to say that Gerard has never been put into a position where he's utilized the full extent of his shrift's power, and therefore the aforementioned statements regarding Lille and his position as leader no longer apply. Speaking of his shrift, however, Gerard's the Miracle exchanges what parts of him have been wounded for what he describes as God's size, essentially meaning that he comes back bigger, stronger, and faster every time he is damaged or killed. He uses this shrift to not only challenge Rukia, Renji, and Byakuya after their training within the walls of the royal palace, but also describes them as ants and grows past even the power of Bankai Kenpachi and confirms that he isn't even bound by Earth's elements and therefore cannot be frozen by the likes of adult Tashiro. Though I believe this is somewhat self-explanatory, being able to match and ascend past the level of Bankai Kenpachi is astounding when taking into account that Kenpachi is previously shown to blatantly surpass other Soul Reapers like Unohana while only in his base, and Unohana who believes that she is stronger than the likes of either Shunsui or Ukitake, and this being implied to be something that the duo themselves seem to somewhat agree with on some level, but then going even further to stack his newly acquired Shikai and Bankai that rapidly raises his spiritual pressure on top of it. Transcending this to the point that Bankai Kenpachi's limbs are tearing open in an attempt to match Gerard's new evolved power is only really justified by the fact that he is rumored to be the heart of the Soul King, alongside the fact that Askin directly confirms that his shrift was something he already held within himself prior and was not given to him by Yhwach once he joined the Sternritter. The strength provided to Gerard by his growth through the Miracle is unheard of and simply something that we do not see among the other members of the Schutzstaffel, and though it's somewhat contradicted by certain pieces of information given to us in Camp for Your Own World or by other statements we're soon to go over, it's difficult to disagree with Gerard when he boldly declares that he is the biggest, fastest, and strongest Quincy. The taking of his power by Yhwach after Ichigo's defeat did cut Gerard's evolution short, but just as Pernida before him and as two pieces of the Soul King, imagining how far Gerard may grow given the opponents he could potentially face serves as all the more reminder as to how awe-inspiring a miracle can truly be. While we've already gone over some pretty formidable showings for these characters so far, you'll be surprised to learn that everyone before pales in comparison and doesn't come anywhere close to that of the power of Uryu Ishida. Uryu is someone who's previously demonstrated the power to fight against characters like Mayuri while using his Quincy Let's Steal, granted to him by the Sanrai Glove. The Sanrai Glove allows you to momentarily reach the peak of your potential as a Quincy following an intense week of training, but afterwards seals away your Quincy powers, similar to that of the results following the use of the final Getsuga Tensho. While Uryu is utilizing his Sanrai Glove, he gains a spiritual pressure that impresses Mayuri to such an extent that he basks in it, declaring that he hasn't seen anything else like it, despite ranking as a captain alongside other Soul Reapers such as Kenpachi, Shunsui, or even Yamamoto. Though the Sanrai Glove and his Quincy Let's Steal are meant to bring out something resembling his full capabilities as a Quincy, even at that early period of time within the story, it's still noted to be an outdated and fragile technique by Quilge Opie, who goes on to state that it was purposely done away with nearly 200 years ago due to its fragility, and the difference between the prior Quincy Let's Steal and the modern-day Quincy Volt Standig is that of heaven and earth. The Let's Steal being the peak of his Quincy power in the Soul Society arc also doesn't account for things he would gain afterwards, say for example his shrift granted to him by Yhwach later being A or the Antithesis, which can reverse events that have already taken place between two designated points in history. Uryu uses this to simply give his wounds that he's attained over the course of their battle to Jugram, but it's insane to ponder what other applications for this ability he could potentially utilize, especially in combination with his newfound power that emerges in the War arc, or if he wasn't put up against someone like Jugram who has a direct counter to his shrift with his own. Even outside of this ability granted to him by Yhwach, Uryu is still as strong as ever as he can damage and react to true Shiga Ichigo. This same Ichigo who has attained his fully realized Zanpakuto and is no longer being suppressed by Zangetsu, who states that all of what Ichigo has fought with before was merely a fragment of his power that he could not contain, meaning things like Dangai or Mugetsu Ichigo are beneath Ichigo's true Shikai and raw power. This is quite a new level for Uryu when you consider that Ichigo is even stronger than he was when he had utterly dominated the evolved Aizen who had transcended both Hollows and Soul Reapers in their entirety, which would include characters like Yamamoto whose Bankai can only be contained by Yhwach, the Zero Division, and the other members of the Schutzstaffel that I've mentioned prior, who fight evenly with or are relative to various members of the 13 Court Guard squads. Uryu is not only the strongest of the Schutzstaffel, but also one of the strongest characters in the series in general, which makes sense when remembering that Yhwach believed that Uryu possessed some sort of power that exceeded his own. With that being said, however, I'm going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. I have other Bleach videos on my channel for you to check out if you're interested, and will continue to upload more videos in the future about Bleach as well as a variety of other topics. So subscribe for free to be notified of what I get up to in the future, such as when I upload or stream. Like the video to support both the channel and myself, as well as let me know that this is the type of content you want to see. Comment down below if I missed anything or with any suggestions you may have for the future. Thank you all for watching, and have a blessed day.